Right now, reporter Govan Whittles is at Nasrec in the south of Johannesburg. Joins us now live to bring us the latest. Govan, good to have you. Good evening. What are we hearing on the ground? Is there a unanimous agreement from all those coming out of this NEC that it will be voted against in Parliament tomorrow?
Well, there certainly isn't unanimous agreement among the NEC members who met here at Nasrec today, but there is a lot of discussion that's happening among ANC MPs that are in Parliament, and we do anticipate that there will be some dissent. An interesting part of the Acting Secretary General's comments regarding the actual report and how it will be approached when it comes to the members of Parliament is that they believe that they should toe the party line, but at the same time they will allow the MPs of the ANC to ask them questions about the report. That's interesting because we already know that some of the intentions of the ANC members who believe that a committee should be set up here, that the report shouldn't be rejected, include the likes of Supra Mahumapelo. Just earlier this week or last week we spoke to the ANC's chief whip in Parliament, Pemi Majodina, who indicated that they would still have that caucus and get uniformity in the decision-making process or in the views of the ANC in Parliament. Today, the National Assembly Speaker announced she had rejected a request by the ATM for a secret ballot to be held, meaning that any vote on the report would happen in the open. So if there is going to be defiance, it would have to be open defiance. That, of course, is very different to what they achieved during former President Jacob Zuma's tenure when ANC members dissented and voted in favor of a motion of no confidence. So there may be intention to dissent, but it'll have to be open dissent, and with that could come serious repercussions for any ANC MPs. Of course, those repercussions will come just ahead of conference, and a lot of these ANC members who will be contested in conference will be careful not to upset the ANC procedures ahead of conference, because of course they would have to account at conference for that. But we also know that what's interesting about the statements today is that they indicate that President Cyril Ramaphosa's faction, so to speak, won most of the battles here. They first won it when the initial NEC meeting sat for 45 minutes and then adjourned because they believed the top six and the NWC had to process the report. They won another battle when the NWC sat and decided that they would reject the report before even coming to the NEC. And now they've won again as the NEC has decided to approve that NWC decision to reject that report. The only real concession they seem to have made is that he will need to make representations to the Integrity Commission. And the Integrity Commission will decide again before the 9th of this month whether or not he should essentially step down because of the findings of the independent panel, and that'll be brought to the NEC again. So they've kicked the can down the road, and there's another battle for Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC and the country, to defend. But it looks like his allies have the numbers, they're holding the line, and their position remains consolidated despite this report. We can see that in their intention to approve his decision to review the report.
Do you get a sense there is appetite on the ground within the ANC for a caretaker president going to the electoral conference this December?
It doesn't look like there's much appetite for a caretaker president. That's indicative of the fact that there was a lot of support that came out from the different branches and the regions, even the provinces, for the president in the wake of even mere speculation that he intended to step aside, intended to resign as the head of state. The fact that he didn't come to the NEC at all with the decision to resign as head of state, and that the NEC didn't confront him on speculation that he intended to resign and had to be convinced by his allies to stay, shows that most of the branches hold their position that they want to support him for a second term. In the wake of this NEC meeting, there's also much more support from his allies saying that they will continue the support towards the second term, but they still believe he's the person that will carry the renewal project through. Just the fact that some of the people that were outside the Nasrec venue when this NEC meeting was happening were some ANC members from the Free State, others from different provinces, as far as Limpopo as well, shows you that his support remains intact, and just even an indication that he intended to resign and abandon, so to speak, this renewal project ignited a lot of support or a lot of action from the people who were already backing him towards the second term here at this conference that's coming up in 2 weeks. It doesn't look like they have a replacement candidate. They can't seem to fathom the prospect of a caretaker president in the wake of a conference coming up, and it looks like they'll force him to carry through this battle or fight this battle and then get into the second term and essentially continue it while his second term has started, because what we're looking at right now is him going to conference, possibly winning that conference, and then having to contend with the Hawks, SARS, the Reserve Bank, launching investigations, possibly, if they believe they're ready, prosecutions against a sitting ANC president. At this point, it's that Integrity Commission decision that will determine whether or not he can stand for a second term at the conference. But if he does, it looks like he stands a good chance of returning as president of the ANC.
Yeah. While this process of the NEC was going on, Govan, we were also watching carefully what was coming out of the briefing earlier in the day by the EFF, who seemed to indicate that the opposition parties are aligned as far as voting for the adoption of the panel report tomorrow, and pointing to the number of ANC members who are MPs who have already spoken publicly around how they feel about this particular report, and they want President Cyril Ramaphosa to go, counting on their support. Are those numbers in their favor?
It doesn't look like those numbers are in their favor. Julius Malema, importantly, indicating a little earlier that they believe the way that they'll win that vote in the National Assembly will be through the Democratic Alliance making up their minds and indicating that they will vote in favor of this report for this committee to be set up. It seems they don't have the assurance from the Democratic Alliance just yet. And of course, in order to get over the line and set up this committee, whether it will be a committee to look at the removal of the president or an ad hoc committee to look at the implementation of this report, will need at least about 40 members of the ANC. Right now, what they have is a rejection by the National Assembly Speaker for that secret ballot vote. In order to secure a secret ballot vote, the ATM would have to approach the courts quite urgently. As of yet, we don't know if they've filed any papers in the courts, and so it would have to be a case of open defiance, and there isn't precedent for open defiance of the ANC line to the ANC caucus. And this would set the precedent, therefore, and as I said, there would be consequences to face there. The fact that the president has also filed his papers in the Constitutional Court strengthens his allies' argument against this report. We've seen analysis and criticism of this report, but for the first time the president stating in those papers to the Constitutional Court that one of the reasons he wants it to be step aside is because it's unclear whether the panel made use of information that was illegally obtained in its investigation. They're referring to the statement from the Namibian police about the meeting between the South African authorities and the Namibian authorities, and the fact that the president had allegedly reached out to the Namibian president for assistance in the Pala case. And the courts will have to decide on that and whether or not that nullifies that report. The president, in seeking relief from the Constitutional Court, says that if it follows that the report itself is step aside, then the sitting itself and the decisions that it takes in the National Assembly should be unlawful and nullified as well. So that'll create a domino effect, and essentially it will leave the EFF's prospects of removing the president through this initial Section 89 committee for the removal of the president on the floor, and it won't have a leg to stand on. Yeah. So Julius Malema's and the EFF's attempts to remove the president here, as much as he says they're gone, they still have a number of hurdles to cross. One of them being the Democratic Alliance, which hasn't put its view out yet, following that briefing by the EFF, and they've expressed reservations about working with the EFF, but we do know that they've benefited from EFF support in the past, so the prospect of them voting in favor of this is not off the table at all. But really the biggest hurdle will be whether or not there will be open defiance from the ANC benches, and what that open defiance will mean for those MPs coming to conference here in just 2 weeks.
Govan Whittles, much appreciated, live for us tonight out at Nasrec there. He's been watching the developments there very carefully for us. Well,